All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today, we're going through Proverbs 6, verse 12. So let's read it. A worthless person, a wicked man, goes about with crooked speech. And again, so the first part of Proverbs 6 was talking about you're in a crisis. You need to humble yourself and start begging because you've pledged security for your neighbor and, you've taken on debt for somebody where you're not really in control. And now you're getting snared in the words of your mouth, caught in the words of your mouth. So it's just a crisis situation. And then it talks about when that crisis situation hits, act with urgency, save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of a hunter, act like your life is on the line, take initiative, go like the ant. And even though they have no ruler, they prepare food for they prepare bread for the summer and gather food in the harvest. So take initiative like the ant, act with urgency like the gazelle or the bird who is being hunted. Humble yourself and beg when you're in the middle of crisis. So this is talking about the actions of crisis. And then it says, for those people who aren't taking action, poverty is going to come upon you um, like a robber, and want like an armed man. So poverty and desire are going to start hijacking your life if you don't take initiative when you're in the middle of crisis. And then it comes to 12, right? So we've gone through all that. And now verse 12 is like a worthless person, a wicked man goes about with crooked speech. And so in my head, reading the context, I'm like, so after poverty comes upon you like a robber and want like an armed man, maybe in verse 12, it's connected to this fact. And a worthless person, a wicked man goes about with crooked speech. You start to speak more negatively. You start to speak badly about people. You start to try to deceive people. And this is all because poverty and desire have hijacked your life. Or we could look at this as a standalone verse and just say, a worthless person, a wicked man goes about with crooked speech, in which we still have crooked speech, which means you're probably still bad mouthing people. You're probably bad mouthing yourself. You're probably speaking negatively about life in general, right? And so that's just my interpretation of this. And when you're in that kind of stage of speaking negatively, whether it be in the context of those other verses, because poverty and desire hijacked your life and you're kind of in the middle of crisis, or you're just speaking negatively in general, it kind of makes you more worthless, more wicked. And I don't want to tie that to your identity specifically, because I think humans have intrinsic value, but there's something worthless in you that you're giving power to. And it's not who you are, but it's what you're doing. And frankly, it needs to stop because it's worthless and it makes you wicked and it makes people perceive you as wicked. So, what's the entrepreneurial application of this? When you're talking poorly about business owners, society, and people who are doing big things in the sphere or who are in your network, like gossiping, I think that's an application of this. But also when you're talking negatively about yours or somebody else's dreams and goals and talking about them like they are worthless or trying to demean them, trying to be a crab pulling another crab back down into the bucket, all that speech is worthless. And so this is different from shedding light on reality. So if you're talking to somebody and they're like, "Ooh, I'm gonna run my business by making 2 cold calls a day," and they've been doing that for 5 years and they're not successful, maybe you look at them, be like, "Hey, I know you've been working hard making 2 cold calls a day, but why don't we try 6 cold calls a day and see if we get anywhere? And if not six, 20, 50, 100 cold calls a day." And so you can hold people accountable and kind of speak to the fact that they need to make some shifts in their life, and you can do that without bringing them down. It's constructive criticism, right? Like compliment them on what they're doing and direct them on what they could do. Don't point out the fact that they haven't been doing it though. Just direct them towards where they could go, because we don't need to punish them. We don't need to shame them. We just need to redirect them, right? And so if you're shedding light on reality and redirecting yourself or others, good to go. But don't shame or judge people in that process. And where has this shown up in my life? I would say my brother and I consistently stop ourselves and redirect our speech when we start talking negatively about our money situation or our life situation or how happy we are, or whatever it may be. If we hear negative speech, we'll redirect ourselves often. And I also try to steer clear of people who judge me slash bring me down, and steer clear of judging other people slash bringing down other people. And so I'll either call them out in the moment, That's if the relationship is important enough to me that I'm like, yeah, you're somebody I want to keep in my life, so you can't be doing that, or eventually you won't be in my life, right? So I'll call out and express my desires, give them an opportunity to not bring me down anymore, or I just steer clear of them. Like one of the two will happen. It just depends on how important the relationship is to me. And to be frank, if you're not going to be here for the next 50 years, you're probably not important enough for me to always be engaging in conflict because that takes energy from me, right? So that's just how I look at it. I understand that's a little bit contrary, but hey, to each their own. Where do I want it to show up in my life? I only want to have speech that uplifts people. And I want to do this by focusing on what is true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, and praiseworthy. That's a verse in the Bible talking about finally, brothers, whatever is true, honorable, just, all the things I just listed out. Focus on these things. And when you focus on these things, the only speech that comes to mind is speech that is going to uplift people because it's based on what is true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, excellent, praiseworthy, commendable about that person. So if I focus on those things, I'll only have speech that resembles those things. That's where I want this to show up in my life because if I don't have crooked speech, that means I've gotten rid of a big piece of a lot of people that is worthless and wicked, right? And if I get rid of that, chances are I'll be less worthless and less wicked, or my actions will be less worthless and less wicked. Again, I think humans have intrinsic value. Your actions don't necessarily dictate who you are and how valuable you are. However, in the world of imperfect people, we do judge people on their actions. And if your actions are presented as a wicked person, you'll probably burn some relationships throughout your life. That's just how it is. God still loves you, but people might love you a little less. There we go. And so I want it to show up in my life by kind of obeying that Bible verse, only thinking about those things, then only speaking about those things. How can you apply it to your life? I would say catch crooked speech in yourself and the people around you. So this is anything that's like, I can't, or I won't, or I'm scared to, or you could never, just any limiting thing. Like if somebody has an idea and you try to bash that idea or take down that idea, even focusing on problems, like, okay, that's a good idea, but what about this, and this? It's like there's a time and a place to present problems and obstacles, and it's not at the onset of an idea necessarily, right? Sometimes, and you got to judge the person, judge the situation. Sometimes people just need to take action and kind of learn a lesson because they're overcoming fear. They're overcoming something emotional, not practical. And so if they're overcoming something emotional, spiritual, and it's not necessarily practical, encourage them so that they can learn that lesson, so that they can overcome that. If they genuinely want practical business feedback, give that for sure 100%, but also give solutions to those problems. Like, okay, but how can we solve this problem? This is a problem I'm seeing. How can we solve it? Don't act like it's not something that can be overcome or that they just need to pivot unless they do need to pivot. But here's the thing. What's this quote? This quote goes like this: the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man adapts the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. So let people be unreasonable because that's how innovation happens. That's how change is pushed forward, right? But, also that's something up to you guys to discern. I'm not trying to run your lives. I'm just presenting some wisdom. So there you go. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out.